Dr. Alex Harrison here for Saturday. I am filming a series on carb loading and everything you could ever possibly want to know about carb loading, from should you use solid foods to should you use supplements, when should you do it, how much, all of the details will be covered. And I realized while I was doing it that it doesn't matter as much as like 10 other things that come to the top of my mind. When it comes to optimizing race day performance, carb loading you should do it. But here are a few things that come to the top of my mind that are more important than carb loading. Number one, gut comfort during your race is more important than nailing your carb loading. If you have diarrhea, you will not be racing fast. And there are 500 ways to give yourself diarrhea on race day. Number two, energy intake during your race. Far more important. If you are racing 2 to 3 hours or longer, certainly if you're racing 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 hours, your energy intake, that is carbohydrate intake during the race, matters, I want to say 10x more, but it's not actually that. It's more like 2 to 4 times more, maybe 5 times more in terms of the actual magnitude. And actually, it might be 10x more. It can be 10x more if you screw it up. If you mess up your carb intake on race day for any reason at all, which brings me to my next point, your race day performance you could be an hour slow on a marathon, or you could be 3 hours slow on something like Leadville or an Ironman triathlon. It can be absolutely catastrophic to under-consume carbohydrates during the race. So the next point is hydration during your race, and that I think is more important than energy intake during your race, and it's more important because it has its own independent effects on performance, that is cardiovascular performance, thermoregulation, which is your ability to tolerate heat, and especially if you're at altitude, the cardiovascular performance effects of hydration are enormous. Your threshold is already down, like if you're doing Leadville, something like Leadville, it's at 10,000 feet, your cardiovascular performance is already going to be down like 20%, 25% if you're not very acclimatized. If you short your hydration and you decrease your blood volume by 10%, 10%? No. You might die. Don't do that. If you decrease your blood volume by, actually, yeah, legit, you can have a decrease in blood volume 10%. It's like maybe 4% body weight. These are super top of mind numbers. Don't quote me. If you decrease your hydration, that is how much water is in your bloodstream, circulating throughout your cardiovascular system, being beat by your heart every beat, you're going to have way less oxygen delivered, 10-20% less oxygen delivered to your working muscles, which means on top of that altitude deficit, if you are at altitude, you could have like a 40% decrease in performance just off the top due to hydration deficits. So that's fluid and sodium. That's way more important than did you supercompensate your glycogen stores during a carb loading procedure 3 days before the race. Point number 3, hydration, is more important than carb loading is because hydration affects your ability to absorb energy. It affects your ability to absorb the carbohydrates that you consume. A well-hydrated gut, because you have water and sodium in your bloodstream circulating around your gut, is a well-functioning gut. A poorly hydrated gut is a poorly functioning gut, and what a poorly functioning gut looks like is gut cramps and diarrhea and an inability to absorb the amounts of carbohydrates that you're consuming. And people ask, well, if I don't absorb it, where is it going? Usually you'll stop consuming because it hurts so bad. It's not like you're going to continue consuming 100 grams of carbs per hour while it's not being absorbed. You'll just throw up. Props to you if you are able to do that. It will eventually just go through you in a not fun way. So yeah, hydration can be infinitely more important. It's life or death. Compared to carb loading, in a race like Leadville or an Ironman, a half Ironman, or like if you're running a 50K, 50-mile trail race that's going to take you 4 to 8 hours, carb loading might have like a 2% performance benefit, 1% performance benefit on those races. Maybe if you are at the tippy pointy end of marathon racing, and you're going to run like a flat road marathon in 2 hours and 40 minutes or 3 hours, or you're doing an Olympic distance triathlon and you've optimized all these other things, and you're going to do your Olympic distance triathlon in 2 hours and 30 minutes, carb loading might produce a performance benefit of 3 to 5%, and that's super generous. Hydration and energy intake during those races will far outweigh carb loading still, even for those 2 to 3 or 4 hour races where carb loading becomes most important because it's right around the time cutoff where your glycogen is going to run on empty. If you find this video helpful, or you think somebody else might, please consider sharing it or liking it or subscribing to our channel. It actually really does help us do what we do. Without your support, this channel is absolutely nothing, so we actually really seriously appreciate your support. Thing number 4 is pacing. Your pacing during the race is, again, infinitely more important than the carb loading procedure that you do. And that's not going to stop me from filming like 10 videos telling you everything you need to know about carb loading. But Your pacing can affect not only obviously your oxygen debt and all the things related to threshold and fat burning and all the things that go into performance, but your pacing affects your ability to consume the fuel and hydration plan that you plan to consume. Okay, in the absence of nutrition, pacing of course affects your performance. A well-paced race, consuming nothing at all, will be faster than a poorly paced race where you have some chunk of the race early that is faster than, like substantially faster than, the later half of the race. Or your pacing can be bad by having it just be stochastic, up and down, spiky throughout the race, where your effort level varies unnecessarily all throughout the race. In either case, pacing will independently affect race performance, and it can affect even your ability to finish the race if it's a very long race, sort of at the limits of your physiological capacity. The effects on nutrition that pacing has, pacing errors especially, can be even more substantial than the modest or moderate effects of like mismanaged pace throughout the race. Of course, if you are going to try to run a 50K trail race and you anticipate your finish time is going to be 4 hours and you take off running at that pace and then your finish time is actually 6 hours, you've way overshot your pace in the first half and you can totally have disastrous results. Let's say you just go 10 seconds per kilometer too fast or 5 seconds per mile too fast. That's not a big differential in pace, and most people might consider that good pacing. That's actually can be quite bad pacing from a nutritional perspective. The difference in gut absorption ability is substantial, especially if you're near threshold, when you change your pace by 5 seconds per mile or by, let's say, 10 watts or 15 watts on the bike. Further, when you are stochastic or you have increased pace or effort level, whether it's on the bike or on the run or in the swim, you lose more fluid in your sweat on average over any given domain for a stochastic period. You also lose more sodium per liter of sweat, which means on average for any given spiky period of effort, you will lose more sodium for the same average pace as you would had you had an even pace for that same average pace. And it can be substantial. It can be the difference between like losing 600 milligrams per hour of sodium in your sweat versus 1500 milligrams per hour of sodium in your sweat. And if your gut is sort of already on the limit, the difference in needing to consume 500 or 600 milligrams per hour of sodium and 1500 milligrams per sodium, or maybe 1200 if you're going for an 80% replacement, can be very meaningful in how that feels on your gut, which, as we mentioned, can be catastrophic to race performance. So, gut comfort, energy intake, fluid and sodium intake, and pacing, as it relates to all of those things, are infinitely more important than carb loading. Chances are some of you are watching this video because you clicked a video in your race week and you're trying to sort of grasp for that confirmation bias that you're doing everything right and that there's something final that you can do to optimize your performance, and you're hoping that maybe carb loading is that thing, but maybe there are these other 4 things that you can do in your final week before the race to eke out that last little bit of performance. And now you're thinking that I've told you it's all intra-workout, all intra-training, intra-race, nutrition related, except for pacing, which you probably already knew about. You're probably thinking, well, I'm not going to change my race fueling plan 1 week out from the race. And I would say you should. Really. The nothing new on race day dogma that has been repeated since like 1989 in endurance circles, I think is safe, but kind of like safely wrong. It's like you're going to incur a performance decrement by doing nothing new on race day. And unfortunately, there are no coaches that are willing to admit that because it's too risky to try to dial in or dial up some of the consumptions on race day from what's been done in training. Because if it goes wrong, like I mentioned, it can be catastrophic. In reality, people can consume 10 to 25% more sodium on race day, 10 to 25% more fluid on race day, and up to 50% more caffeine on race day, and maybe 0 to 10% more energy intake on race day. Where people get into trouble is when they decide during the race that they're going to try to increase energy intake because they're feeling terrible in the second half of the race, and now they're trying to consume 10% more carbs per hour than they did ever during training. They're doing it in a dehydrated state, in a high fatigue state, where their gut's not functioning already, and that's where people get into trouble, and that's why everybody says nothing new on race day. In reality, you actually should have something new on race day, and maybe I will get into the nuances of that. But if this is your race week and you are looking for that last thing to do, yes, you can watch watch the 10 videos that are going to come out after your race about carb loading and all the nuances that go into it, but you should look into your race fueling, because you should actually dial it up slightly, especially if your race is in a thermally challenging environment and you haven't been training at the same duration and intensity as your race combined. And most people don't. If you're racing a 6 or 10 hour race, you probably aren't race modeling the entire race in your training. So yeah, you should dial up your sodium and fluid for sure. Definitely dial up your caffeine. And have an awesome race. I just wanted to add, there will be no judgment if you have all sorts of questions about carb loading, even though I'm saying it's not that important and there's other things you should be focused on. Please seriously leave comments and I will attempt to include it in the videos. There are more important things than carb loading, and yet I'm going to give you a series on everything you need to know about carb loading. Thank you so much for watching.